Greetings and peace. I would like to start this with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be with you and yours. This presentation I would like to do on the West African Sufi origins of what we know as Voodoo in New Orleans. There is a symbolism and a connection that is there that many often overlook. I hope you enjoy this, and I represent myself only. This is looking at the Islamic origins of Voodoo in New Orleans. This presentation explores the Islamic, particularly Sufi origins of Voodoo in New Orleans. It argues that many core mystical elements in Louisiana Voodoo stem from West African Islamic traditions. The transmission of spiritual knowledge through Sufi lineages helped shape Afro-Creole religious practices. And in this talk, we trace a mystical genealogy from West Africa to the bayous of Louisiana. The overview is that Sufism, which is mystical Islam, spread throughout West Africa via trade routes and spiritual orders like the Qadariyya and Tijaniya. Core Sufi principles include dhikr, which is remembrance, baraka, spiritual blessing, and the guidance of the marabouts, the spiritual leaders. Sufi rituals emphasize divine unity, spiritual ecstasy, and personal transformation, parallels with Voodoo. Scholars like John Hunwick and Nehemiah Lefstion have documented the profound influence of Islam in West African society. Now, a significant number of enslaved Africans brought to the Americas were Muslims, particularly from Senegambia and Mali. These individuals were often literate in Arabic, memorized Quranic verses, and carried deep mystical knowledge. Arabic manuscripts from the antebellum South attest to the persistence of Islamic learning under slavery, and a book recommended to understand this is The Servants of Allah, African Muslims Enslaved in the Americas. The enslaved Muslims adapted Sufi forms under Christianized and colonial constraints. Repetitive chant, which is dhikr, became song and dance invoking the Loa. The structure of possession rituals in Voodoo mirrors Sufi spiritual gatherings, the Hadra. Memory, adaptation, and cultural synthesis played key roles in this transformation. Louisiana is a unique melting pot of different peoples. The Code Noir from 1685 governed slavery in French colonies and paradoxically allowed African religious practices. New Orleans became a crucible for syncretic spiritualities, Catholicism, African traditions, and Islam. Sundays at Congo Square preserved rhythms, rituals, and communal mysticism, and the bayou itself became a sacred geography for Creole ritual life. Now, the marabouts, who are the Sufi spiritual leaders, functioned as healers, diviners, and protectors through talismans and prayers. Hungans in Voodoo share parallel roles, community spiritual guides with access to hidden knowledge. The use of the gris-gris, the amulets in New Orleans, likely derives from Islamic protective charms. And also see the book from Gomez, Exchanging Our Country Marks. The commonalities of the ritual is that both dhikr and Voodoo rituals involve rhythmic repetition, trance states, and divine invocation. In Sufism, chanting the names of God induces spiritual ecstasy. In Voodoo, drumming and chant invite spirit possession by the Loa. Each serves as a method for divine encounter and transformation. Now, from the cosmology perspective, the Loa and Islamic beings, like jinn and angels, serve as intermediaries between humans and the divine. Spirits are approached through ritual, respect, and invocation in both traditions. Sufi saints and ancestral spirits function as guides, protectors, and channels of divine will. These cosmologies suggest shared mystical structures across these traditions. If you look at the sigils in Voodoo, it does reflect Arabic calligraphy, and West African geomantic signs. Islamic talismans feature magic squares, symbols, and sacred scripts. Practices found in voodoo amulets. Mystical symbols transmit barakah and spiritual knowledge silently through visual forms. These symbolic codes point to a shared esoteric heritage. Resistance and hidden Islam in the Bayou. Enslaved Muslims practiced Islam in secret. Hidden prayer rugs, fasting, Arabic whisper prayers, Islamic identity blended into Creole mysticism as survival strategy and spiritual resilience. The bayous and the swamps were safe havens for clandestine ritual and remembrance. These practices preserved fragments of Islamic worldview. And if you look at the game Assassin's Creed Liberation, I believe, with Aveline, who's in New Orleans, right? And her mentor, the old man, is in the bayou. That's where his hideout is. And of course, Assassin's Creed is based on the Islamic Hashashin. So it shows that her mentor, who's a part of that system, was out in the bayou, which is portrayed in the video game. If you look at Mary Laveau, the famed voodoo queen, she employed spiritual practices linked to Islamic healing rites. Oral traditions claim she used Arabic words, prayer beads, and Islamic-like invocation techniques. She embodied a fusion of Catholic, African, and possibly Sufi mysticism, and her legacy represents the spiritual hybridization of her era specifically. Now, from a contemporary point of view, modern scholars have revisited African Islamic contributions to Afro-Caribbean and African American religions. Sylvian Diouf, Michael Gomez, and others highlight the Sufi substrate of the diaspora, the spirituality of it. Islam and voodoo are no longer seen as opposites, but are parallel mysticism systems of each other, and this invites a reevaluation of identity, resistance, and mysticism in the Atlantic world. And even if you go to West Africa today and look at the different Sufi orders and how things are really done, you will see the connection. As we conclude, we see that voodoo in New Orleans is not simply African. It carries Islamic mystical DNA. Through chant, symbols, trance, and cosmology, Sufi forms have endured in Creole ritual. Understanding these links enriches our view of spiritual survival and transformation. The mythical path transcends borders, revealing unity in diversity. Thank you for exploring this mystical journey through time and spirit, and I dedicate this to my Sufi brothers and sisters and to friends in New Orleans. I hope you were able to take something away from it.